We are not sick. We are living with disease. The only thing we have to do is to take our pills and we're going to be strong. My name is Noglunga Hlenga. I'm 15 years old. I was born on 4 January 2000 and my mother died on August 2000. And I was born with HIV. The first time I went to the clinic, I was shocked because I didn't know why I'm sick, and don't lose hope to give us treatment. We need this treatment. Yes.
In 2000, I was aware of the fact that there was going to be the International AIDS Conference was going to be in Durban, South Africa, and I made the decision to go. And there was a lot of anticipation because President Mbeki, who had said that HIV didn't cause AIDS, was going to be speaking at that event. And we knew that Madeleine Albright and a lot of very powerful people had strongly recommended that he not say that again. And then, so when the program happened and he spoke, he said, you know, HIV is caused by poverty. And so a large group of us got up and left in protest. I went back to my room, and one of the porters in the hotel said, somebody's looking for you. So I didn't know what that meant, but I went back to my room, and when I walked in the door, I saw an envelope under the door that had slipped under the door, and I opened it, and it said that we're South African activists, and we'd like to talk to you. And so please come and meet us in a restaurant downstairs, we're waiting.
During the AIDS conference, there was a group of what we called in those days volunteers who had an NGO, a non-governmental organization, and it was called Netcom. And first they tried to find him at the conference and they couldn't, and then somebody told him the hotel that he was staying at, and so they went to the hotel, left a note, and he basically responded to their note.
When I went to meet them and they were telling me their story, I said, you know, it's fine to come to a conference like this and sit through official sessions with experts, but I'd like to know what's going on the ground. I said, so can you take me out and show me? It was incredibly eye-opening. It was such a desperate circumstance. There was nothing for people. And having traveled quite a bit in the world, I have certainly seen dire poverty. But when I went to this township outside of Durban called Mlazi, it was a city of 1 million people, all of which were shacks, basically. But then when we went to some of the organizations that were helping people living with HIV, they were in such desperation because here it was already 2000, and in the United States we'd already had the treatment revolution with the cocktail, and no one there was being treated. And really there was such a sense of hopelessness. You know, it was very, very, very sad, and it made me angry because really essentially the government had abandoned millions of people in South Africa.
They asked him, they said, look, our people are dying. We are burying people every single day. What is it that you're doing in America that's different to what's happening here in South Africa? And
so I said to them, why don't you come to the United States? This was in July. I said, why don't you come in December? And then we'll talk about what a partnership might look like. So that took place, and then the rest is history.
I was home on a Sunday, and Michael Weinstein called me. I got the call, and he said, do you have a passport? I said, yes, I have a passport. And he said, can you go to South Africa? I said, yes, I can go to South Africa. To do what? You know, and he said to start this clinic as soon as possible. And I said, well, when would you want me to go? Wednesday. So 3 days later, I said, of course I said yes. And I'm kind of the go-to person when we don't have a plan, go make it happen. The very first clinic at the shopping center was nothing glamorous. It had been some offices that had been abandoned for a long time. So we're walking through, and I always try to see the potential in things. And I turned around the corner and I saw a big dead rat on the floor. And everything was filthy, and it had just not been occupied for so long. I thought, oh my God, how are we going to clean this up and make this a state-of-the-art clinic? Because I knew I had U.S. Congresswomen coming for the ribbon cutting, and I was on a deadline. But we did it, and we tore out walls and made this office into a clinic. And it wasn't enough room. It grew, it was very small right away, but we made it happen.
At that time, medications cost about $5,000 per person per year in Africa. So we knew that we couldn't really help that many people. So we said, okay, we'll set up a clinic for 100 to start with and demonstrate that it can be done.
And of course we had this whole big fanfare. We were going to open this clinic, and the clinic was ready to be opened. And at the time, the government was not the ANC government-controlled city of Durban. It was controlled by the Inkatha Freedom Party. And so we had asked the Inkatha Freedom Party to be the premier to come and open, and that was just like bad news.
There was, a lot of drama. I mean, what was interesting was that when we went to South Africa in 2001 to dedicate the clinic, we were accompanied by two U.S. Congresswomen, Congresswoman Watson and Lee. And the Minister of Health, his name was Monto at the time, she was famous because she talked about people with HIV using olive oil and beetroot and things like that as treatments. And the morning of the opening of the clinic, we got a call from her office. I was with both of the congresswomen, and they asked us to come to downtown, to a hospital in downtown, and that she wanted to meet us there before the opening. So we went.
And so we waited for the minister and waited for the minister. We were then told from here to go to Addington Hospital, from Addington Hospital. We ended up on the beachfront, and then we got a message from the minister. And the message went like this: tell those women if they open that clinic, there will be trouble.
So at one point, Congresswoman Watson, who is a very tall person and dresses very elegantly, she just swept up out of her chair.
And she just said, bullshit.
And said, the people are waiting.
She said, we are opening that clinic.
And then we left and went to the clinic. On the way to the clinic, we got a call saying that there were armed people there. And we got very freaked out.
When we got there, there were policemen, but there was also a group of ANC people who were agitating that we don't open the clinic. But because I think Michael is Michael, and he had the support of the two congresswomen, and they stood fast. So we opened the clinic.
Today, I have a minus 50 CD4 count, viral load, and 3 months ago my CD4 was 165. I can get up in the morning and see to my kids. I can prepare their breakfast. I can supervise homework. I can work. And most of all, I can be around at least that my children see adulthood before I leave here.
My name is Jenny Boyce, and I'm been a patient at Ithemba Labantu since 2002. I'm patient number 21, one of the first groups of people on antiretroviral drugs at Ithemba Labantu and in the country.
One of the things was back here in the United States in Los Angeles, we all thought that we were going to open the doors of this clinic and we would be inundated with patients. We'd have to, there'd be queues and lines up at the door, but that's not what happened. it was kind of slow, in the beginning, and we couldn't really figure out what that was until we really realized that there was such a stigma about treatment. People were quite afraid to try out this Ithembala Bantu clinic.
For a lot of us, there was an uncertainty. Medication wasn't provided in the country, and there was a lot of talk about it being toxic, being more detrimental than the disease, and so we were coming to the clinic because for me, I wanted to live. I had a lot to live for. But I must say that I was also afraid because I was walking into something that not many people had done.
AHF Ithembala Bantu Clinic started when government was not giving antiretrovirals to patients or to people living with HIV. And AHF came in and defied that. And they were buying drugs out of AHF coffers to provide drugs to those patients. And it was a rough time in the country because there was a lot of denialism.
The whole experience at Ithembala Bantu in those days, we were very, very sick, all of us. Very, very sick.
Initially, we were getting people who were really sick. Even the CD4 of people who used to come, they would come with a CD4 of 1, CD4 of less than 20. We had a lot of those.
In the waiting room, you could almost smell the smell of death, That memory is always very distinct for me, because we were sitting there, people were in wheelchairs, people were weak, people were really, listless. It was hanging at a string of life.
Early on, I met 2 or 3 women at the clinic that were proposed to me to be my new advocacy group. And one of them was Jenny Boyce. And at that time, she was pretty sick. She was thin, not doing that well, and I wanted to videotape her. So I said, I'd really like to get an interview with you. And I had a really old little camera. I videotaped it myself. And she had her little son, Dylan, sitting on her lap, during that interview. And what she talked about was very emotional. She talked about she just wanted to stay alive until Dylan got out of high school. And I've never forgotten that because I was determined to keep her alive for Dylan.
I would say really that Jenny Boyce was the person, when I think of South Africa and what's been done there, when I think of the heroes, she's the person among the patients that really, really comes to mind. Her testimonies, I think, really changed the environment, and I feel like that she did it at a time when it was really difficult to do it, and she was fearless. And despite all the warnings about the drugs being poison, etc., people started to come. And the results were almost instantaneous.
I remember that I had this infection on my skin, and I didn't even notice that it was gone. It was Dr. Masoki who said to me, "Jenny, your skin is looking so much better." I never looked in the mirror. I was too afraid to look in the mirror. And then he said to me, your skin infection is looking so much better. And it was the first time that I noticed that it was actually better.
My problem inkinga yami kwakuwukuthi mhlambe ngase kwenzeke ngishone because i-CD4 count yami yayilo. After that, emva kuba sengidla amaphilisi ama-ARVs yakhuphuka i-CD4 count going to 250, and ngakwazi ukuthi i-viral load ibe undetectable, suppresseke. Ngase ngiba right after that ukuthi hayi, I'm going to be alive.
There was one patient that came in a wheelbarrow, brought in by the mother. The mother told us a story that people kept on coming to check if he was dead, you know. But then the mother brought this patient to the clinic. And when he started getting better, he brought so many patients because people were asking, how did you get help? Because they were expecting him to die. And he brought a lot of patients to Ithembalabantu.
People who were really sick within a month were doing well, and people were going back to work, and they were going from being so emaciated to looking healthy. And so then the word spread really rapidly.
I was sick, very, very sick. Maybe I was going through the heaven. You understand what I'm saying to you? So my mother asked somebody, and then somebody tell my mother, if you go to the Mawelin, you see, there's a Ithembalabantu clinic there. You understand? So I thank my God and I thank my mother. My mother loves me, you understand, and my family. So she took me to the Ithembalabantu, and then I started treatment. So 2005 and 2006, still I'm alive. Yes, Busiso, hey, you are right now. Yes, I'm eating the treatment. If you tell me I must eat it, I will do that. You understand what I'm saying? So after that, 2007, still I'm alive. You understand?
People would come to the clinic, they wouldn't be sure when they see us sitting there. They'd see us looking well and they sick. And we were a testament that you can be well.
And at that time, we were still the only free program for antiretroviral therapy, for HIV treatment in KwaZulu-Natal. So that was the only place you could get it. And you know, for what we were trying to do at that time, it seemed just fine. But you know, it started to get very, very, very crowded.
One of the hardest things for me as an activist was I would go 2 or 3 times a year to South Africa. And each time I went, I would immediately go to the current patient chart, and behind it was a waiting list. That waiting list would get bigger every time I would go, but what was most disturbing is the deceased was at the back of the waiting list. And every time I went, that got bigger and bigger. And that drove my sense of urgency, like, this is not okay. These people are dying on the waiting list. And the only way we could stop this is to bring the drug prices down. At the time, we really wanted to work with the government. We've always wanted to be a partner, but that wasn't possible. I remember one meeting I had with the Department of Health, and I was telling the head, people are dying at our doorstep. We want to work with you. Can you help us? And I'll never forget what he said back. He said back, Terry, people are dying every day here. We see it all the time. It doesn't matter. The process needs to be fulfilled and the forms need to be completed. And you didn't complete the right form on Friday. You know, so I was just like, okay, wow, this is what we're dealing with.
At that time, the US government was supporting drug companies who were suing South Africa to prevent them from getting generics. So, you know, at $5,000, we didn't have the money to subsidize more than 100 people. But also, we really wanted to use that platform to advocate for bringing down the prices, which we did. The largest drug maker at that time for AIDS drugs was GlaxoSmithKline, and we wound up running a campaign which involved attacking the CEO's pay. It involved, suing them to invalidate their patents.
So we figured out, okay, we're going to go to London and we're going to go to their shareholders meeting. We're going to disrupt it. Michael Weinstein and I went, and several others, and we got up and they were shaken. You know that we were there doing that, and that was the beginning. And then in South Africa, in Durban, we organized. Glaxo had an office in Durban, so we organized our patients to march on the Glaxo office. It was on Florida Road. Cynthia Latuli was out there, those nurses, and they're from the apartheid revolution, so they weren't afraid, they had a lot of courage. But Dr. Tutla was our medical director at the time. She brought all her daughters. We showed them what we do in the United States with the activism. And that's what the original activists asked us. How do you so effectively advocate against your own government? So we brought some of our tools and we did that. We did that on Glaxo, we did that with the government, and that was really rewarding. We all together brought those prices down, which has saved millions of lives.
And that resulted in the price over time, over a few years, going down from $5,000 to $100. And then that allowed us and others to greatly expand the number of people being treated.
Really, it was about saving lives as fast as possible.
Also, you've had the change of government in South Africa. And when Zuma came into government, he basically made HIV a priority and then started the partnership with government, whereby they would give us the drugs, which would then make the cost less expensive for AIDS Healthcare Foundation, because up until the time of the agreement, that was almost 5 years, that AIDS Healthcare Foundation USA was funding South Africa as a clinic. It then relaxed some of the pressure, giving us a window into expansion.
One of the most interesting things about South Africa situation is it went from being one of the worst places in terms of providing care to people and in terms of being active around HIV to being one of the best.
We so appreciate that the government now wants to work with us, they partner with us, they appreciate what we want to bring, we appreciate what they're doing, which is incredible. The South African government has stepped up more than any government in the world, and we want to continue our partnership so that we can stop HIV in South Africa. And the way to do that is to get as many people tested and on treatment as possible, and we can turn back the virus.
Working with HIV and the people around Umlazi is quite interesting, because the more information you give people, the more they get encouraged to go on getting tested, getting treatment.
The original clinic had less than 200 people. We are now into almost 15,000 people at our new clinic.
When I look back where we started with very few patients, and we have got so many patients, and we started with 3 people working for AHF. We have got hundreds now.
I'm quite proud of the work that we are doing now, and there's a lot more other special clinics that we have introduced, especially the clinic for the blind and deaf community. Our clinic with children have increased, so there's a lot more that has changed from the day I walked in.
I must say that Ithemba Labantu is unique because it's looking at the needs of HIV positive people, looking at TB and other related diseases. But the care that it's provided is different from what government is providing, because patients feel at home, they feel they belong. They make friends. There are patients that got married they met at the clinic and they got married. So it's like a home. You go into that clinic and you feel you're in the right space. There's hope, and the name itself, Ithemba Labantu, is hope, giving hope to people.
Ithemba Labantu has become legendary. We support many clinics now, and I'm constantly asking, why do people keep flooding into Ithemba Labantu? And they say, word of mouth, it's just the place to go for treatment in Umlazi.
If it's my dates, I'm going to a clinic and I fetch my treatment. They give me 3 months. They treat me well. I love Ithemba Labantu. They're my everything. And like support school, they give me feel well about my status. I love them. My doctors, Dr. Mbara, Gigi, social work. I love them, all of them.
Working in this environment with these kind of patients, it satisfies. I every day when I come in the morning, I feel like I'm blessed to be here, because somehow I get to touch a person's life.
if AHF didn't come into South Africa at the time they came into South Africa, many of us wouldn't be here to tell the story. Many of us would not have survived.
I mean, I really believe that what we did in South Africa, not just AHF, but other activists and other people who brought care to South Africa, that we literally saved millions of lives.
South Africa is such an incredibly beautiful country, maybe the most beautiful country in the world, yet it's got this cloud of HIV/AIDS over it. That's what it's known for. And that is not right. We want to end AIDS. Let's end it together. And let South Africa be the incredible, beautiful country that it is. It should be a new day in South Africa.
To all the people who work for AIDS Healthcare Foundation, thank you. From the bottom of our hearts, the people of South Africa say, you rock.
I believe that together,
Together.
Together.
I believe that together we can end HIV.